This video is for your Greek class. It goes along with your Croy textbook, and so I would grab that and follow along. I'm just going to go through chapter 29 and 30 together. These are both based on the concepts from chapter 28, so if you learned about didomi, you should be in pretty decent shape here. This is just some more me verbs. Τίθημι follows many of the rules of didomi. So in the present tense, there's this reduplication, the tith. So τίθημι, and then the rest of it would follow the exact form so that you saw in the didomi. So if you learn the didomi, you're in good shape. In the aorist, you have the etheka, which is exactly kind of like what we saw with the didomi. So they parallel each other. The perfect tense is reduplicated with an epsilon and has a ka. This is how to distinguish it. So the tetheka is the perfect form of it. So far, this is pretty much just following the didomi rules. The reason that I think it's its own chapter is because a bunch of verbs fall into this category, and so they're introducing you also to apolumi. Apoluo is its other version of it, and deikumi, which is deikno. So you have some verbs here. Τίθημι is one of these in which you have some other words that can substitute for it, but then apolumi and deiknumi are ones that have then an omega version too. And so you can see this transition in Greek toward a uniform verbal system with all of them being omegas. And it's occurring here. And so that's what's introduced in chapter 29. But chapter 29 is basically the same thing as chapter 8, just with this additional idea that, some verbs are going back and forth between the two forms, the omega form that you learned originally and the me form. Chapter 30 has ṋήστημι, and the reason it's on its own is that it has a super weird stem. And you can't guess this, but the stem is actually just sta. And because of that, it's probably the most complex of the me verbs. It also gets to be complex because it's a really common verb. And so this is one that deserves its own chapter. The ideas aren't new. For the most part, the only thing that's maybe new here is that it also can have a transitive meaning, so somebody else can cause you to stand or can establish something. Or you could stand or stand firm yourself. And so it's got a lot of range of meaning. That's why it's a common word. That's why it can be unusual. It's just basically like a second aorist. It's a stem change on steroids. So here are the principal parts of it. We are learning some principal parts. We will work more in the rest of this class on principal parts of especially unusual verbs. And so this is just one we're going to have to learn because although technically it's following some rules, the rules are complicated enough that it would be better just to learn that that's the present, that's the future, that's the aorist, that's the perfect and the perfect passive and the aorist passive. Some forms are more common than others, and so Croy has emphasized the forms that are more common. So again, I would encourage you to see paragraphs 324 through 335. So he's got a bunch of paragraphs in here that help you with understanding the ṋήστημι, and this might be one that, this is how I treated it at first in Greek. I didn't learn it, I just marked it, so that anytime I came across one of these words, I could go back and find it in my textbook and help myself. Here's some examples of what it would look like. So, estesa, ta paidan, epi lithon, I set the child on a rock, or I placed the child on a rock. You can have this one, ha kurias stase hemeron, the Lord will establish a day. Or you can have these intransitive ones, where it's like, edes me estota ento hiero. You saw me, and what was I doing when you saw me? I was standing in the temple. He gune este ente argo, the woman stood in the field. Just past tense, she stood there. You're going to learn these by practicing them. Like, there's just no kind of shortcut to it. A miscellaneous item that Croy has just stuck here, but one that I think would be worthwhile mentioning, is that chapter 30 also mentions that there's this Greek verb, themi. So again, it's a me, so I think that's why he sticks it here. Is roughly synonymous with Lego. So just like I showed you in chapter 29, there's somewhere you can see a transition between me and omega verbs. Lego seems to have already won out mostly by the time of Koine Greek, at least in the Empire, but themi pops up here and there, and themi introduces oftentimes direct address, and so you have these third person singulars, present active indicative, he, she, or it says. Third person plurals, fasin, they say. Third singular imperfects, so he or she said in the past tense. Those are the three most common ones that you'll see, and it mentions that in this chapter. You also have this that he throws in here, which is that there's a second aorist of bino and gnosko. Both of these have irregular second aorist stems that we are going to have to just learn some of these principal parts, and so we kind of already knew that, but we'll take that up in the rest of this semester. Those are the main things in this chapter. I would encourage you to maybe take a second look at this video. If you wanted to, you could even go back to chapter 28, because this is based on the same concepts from 28 and just building upon them. We're not going to spend a ton of time on any of these, and so for now you might want to just mark some of the things that you want to be able to come back to, because our goal is not going to be to memorize all of this, but just to be aware that there are these me verbs and that they happen, and that a few of them are somewhat common, and then we'll start coming across the same ones again and again. We're not going to need a ton of these to do 1 John. And so you're going to need these more if you decide to go on in Greek. And so these are why they're later chapters in the book, and so they're also the kinds of things you could come back to in the summer or some other time when you're fresh and be able to kind of focus on them more. This video is very short. It gives you the very, very most basics, but it mostly pushes you back to the Croy textbook that has so much more information that would be helpful, and so I encourage you to go there. But if you have any questions, email me, bring those questions to class, we can talk about it further. I look forward to it. We are so close to the end of what we need to learn from our textbook, so really excited to have spent this time learning Greek with you. Okay, thanks.